welcome everyone. We're gonna start our presentation. Hopefully you had a good lunch or a good break. We'll start with just a brief introduction. My name is Dr. Trelisa Glazatoff. I work at Chaffey College as the credentialing systems designer. That means that I do a lot of skills-based work with faculty, as well as just making sure that our systems are integrated so that we can capture that great rich data when we're doing skills assessment. And I'll turn it over to Matt to briefly introduce himself, and then we'll get started with our presentation.
Great, thank you. My name is Matt Morin, and I'm the Dean of Academic Affairs at Santa Ana College. And we were going to have Laura Picklesheimer, our English faculty member from Chaffey College, joining us, but she was affected by the wildfires, so she won't be able to join us today, but she's here in spirit.
All right, so let's go to the next slide and get into the meat of what we are doing today. As we go through the presentation, if you have questions, some burning questions, make sure to put them in the chat. We'll do some pauses throughout as well, just so if you want to just voice your questions or thoughts, we'll give you some space to do that as well. But today we're going to talk through the nuts and bolts of how measurement and the clarity of learning looks at Chaffey College right now. We're going to show you the process, share the process, share some examples of how we work through the process, the data that we're getting from the system, as well as how we've integrated some new tools to help streamline all of the data gathering that we are hoping to get. So let's start with cooking in the kitchen. No worries, you can go to the next slide, Matt. Before we get started, we're going to think about this from a student perspective. So think about a student named Sylvester, who's 17 years old, duly enrolled, and has just completed his first year of college courses. He's hoping to major in cybersecurity and get into that field, and is hoping to transfer to a 4-year, hopefully at HBCU. So as we go through this presentation, start to think about what might be those durable and technical skills that Sylvester may begin to develop in his first year of college, especially if he's taking like English and poli-sci, as well as some of his major courses as well, okay? So we're gonna pull in Sylvester into this conversation. So at Chaffey, if we go to the next slide, we really began to think about skills in this T-shape. We started with the durable skills, which cover, those are those employability skills or those relational soft skills that can be applied across the curriculum. And then over the last year, we really started to go more in depth around the technical skills and look at how can we start pulling the skills that are being developed that are discipline specific. So we're going to take a look at both of those and how we approach that from a campus perspective. So we did have a process. So before we jumped into this work with our faculty and with our departments, we really took a step to say, what would be a scalable process for us? What would help us ramp up in a short order and be consistent in our process and work together in our faculty? And so this became our process to work with departments and faculty in identifying skills. And it's a 5-step process. The first step is really just having a one-on-one conversation with a faculty lead to really just look at, what do you think you are teaching and developing in your students as they come and engage with you in your in the department? And we don't look at data, we don't look at program maps or anything like that. It's really a conversation about the experience. What has been your experience as faculty and what has been the students' experience as learners who have come and engaged with you in your courses. And I have done this work with a lot of departments, and I'm gathering that information. So I'm putting on my instructional design hat on, and I'm really listening. I'm listening for a couple of things. I'm listening for skills. I'm listening to see what's valued and important to faculty and their discipline. And I'm going to take that information, and when I go into the data, see if that aligns with what I'm seeing in the curriculum. So that's the first step, is to have that conversation. And then I go back into the lab and I pull every single course that is being offered in that department. I'm pulling their course of records, their syllabi, and I'm looking at their course objectives and their student learning outcomes that have been expressed in writing. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, what's popping out? What consistently pops out in language and understanding about what they're developing? And so I'm pulling that out, I'm drafting that, and I'm mapping it back to their curriculum. So that's steps 2 and 3. Let's figure out what the consistent language should be, and let's draft out an understanding. I'm doing this in draft mode, and I'm mapping it back to their language and their skills. And I'll show you how this may look. Each of these steps may look in another slide. Once I have that draft, now we have skills, we have language, and we have a draft curriculum map that maps it back to the skill. Now I'm going back to the department. They're going to get that information. They're going to have time to process it as a department. And then I'm going to have another meeting with them. And I'm going to say, how does this look? Is it speaking to you? Did we miss anything? Does it make sense based on your understanding of what you do in this department? And sometimes it's a yes, and sometimes it's a no. We got to tweak some things, but that's part of the process. We adapt, we add to, and we finalize it in a couple of meetings to say, this is what we're doing, and it's skill-based language. Yes, this is what we're going to do, or what we are doing. Once we have that agreement, now we can then put it into our systems. So that's the last steps. We're going to put it into the system, so now that faculty can to directly assess those skills, but more importantly, they can begin to think about other alternative pathways, maybe microcredentialing or other academic pathways that they are developing and how that aligns with those groups of skills. But that's left up to the department at that time. That base work is done, and now we can move forward because now we have agreements on language and skills. So let's take an example and see how that may look. So here's computer information system. These are real numbers. So computer information systems, they have 3 academic pathways. They had computer science, computer information systems, and cybersecurity. And they offered 11 certificates. When I pulled all of their data, all of the courses and all of that, the information from those courses, we came up with 340 course objectives and 124 course student learning outcomes. So combined, we had, over 450 plus data points to now analyze and say what skills are popping out. And so when I did that, if we go to the next slide, we ended up with 7 key skills. And so this is sort of how, yes, let's stay here, for example. This is sort of how the framework looked. We identified the skill, coding and scripting. And we added language of what does that mean when we say coding and scripting. And then underneath that, we added learning outcomes to say coding and scripting means application development. It means database design. It means web development. It means learning how to do virtual and augmented reality experiences. And it's also game design. So those were all grouped into coding and scripting, right? And so that is the structure. We had an overarching skill, and then what we're calling learning outcomes, which speaks to, when we say coding and scripting, what are we doing in our programs relative to this? And can we add some language? And so the language is around creating and designing and building and coding as well, because that's what they want students to be able to demonstrate. So we now have 7 overarching skills and then learning outcomes underneath that speak to that language. That then becomes your skill catalog for computer science. Now we're able to map it back to courses to say what courses are developing these skills. So if you look at this table shows an example of, to the left, all of the courses and the course name. Then there's a section around the disciplinary skills. Those are the 7 skills. Right now, this is showing us cybersecurity. So of those 7 skills, cybersecurity is focusing on 4 of the 7. They're focusing on organizational vulnerability, data integrity, data confidentiality, and data availability. So that's that middle section. And then the section to the right of that breaks it down even further. So when we talk about organizational vulnerability, that may have had 4 learning outcomes underneath. Which of those 4 are you specifically targeting? Right? So if we take a look at that first line, CSI 1, which is Introduction to Computer Information Systems, we can see how their current student learning outcomes map to the skill language. This essentially is their curriculum map, but now it's skill focused. This is the draft that was given to the department, and then they can have a discussion to say, does this make sense? Because sometimes they say, well, no, we're doing more. And the response is, I know you are, right? Because sometimes we're not explicit and intentional in our SLOs, and we know you're teaching more than just these 2 or 3 skills. So let us know what else you're teaching. And now they can use this mapping to visually identify how those skills are being developed across their entire department curriculum. Make sure if you have any questions that you put it in there so that we make sure that we address it. They can also, as a department, cybersecurity said, well, we also know that there are some unique skills that are valuable to industry. Can we bundle those and maybe make microcredentials? You certainly can now. So these were the bundles that the department decided they wanted to create microcredentials for. They wanted the cybersecurity bundle and the CS bundle. And you can see of those 7, you can see how those bundles played out. But now they have other ways to build those alternative pathways. So let's go to the next slide. So that is an example of the process. Now you may say that's cybersecurity, that's a little bit more technical. Can we do it for other areas? We have. So this is telling you that same 5-step process, the same skill identification and mapping has been done across all of our programs, regardless of the area, whether it was STEM or social services or health. Everybody has participated in this process and has done the work to identify their skills. And now they're at the step of being able to assess within the systems. So let me stop there and see if anybody wants to voice any questions or concerns, thoughts before we go to the next section. It makes sense? Yes, cool. I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about this next step. Well, we do have one question, and maybe you can speak to this, Matt. Kate asked, was this part of the guided pathways?
Oh, it's so interesting that you asked that. So, formally, Guided Pathways hasn't made learning outcomes assessment like a key component of how the initiative has rolled out, across the state or even across the country. But I personally feel like it maybe should have been the first thing that we addressed in Guided Pathways, even before program maps, because, what's the purpose in doing a program in terms of doing course sequencing if you don't even really have a clear understanding about what the scaffolding is of competencies within those courses throughout the program that you're going for? And so, it's fitting that pillar number 4 is ensure learning, although I think it should have been pillar number 1. And that we should have focused on that all along as like a major priority. But I almost feel like doing this work, the work that we're all doing here in the SLO Symposium, really is the most Guided Pathways type of work, even if Guided Pathways hasn't really congealed some discrete kind of initiative activities around it. But it will. We're going to get them there. So, and this is very guided pathways, what you're looking at right now, which is this is where what Trey just described as a process for helping faculty to change their learning outcomes on their courses into a real scaffolded and organized competency pathway framework for their programs of study. What you're looking at here is where this becomes also a part of the student experience. As you know, learning outcomes on syllabi are not something students tend to spend a lot of time thinking about. But what we've done is created digital credentials so that when students are being assessed in Canvas for the learning outcomes that Trey was just talking about, they earn digital badges and microcredentials along the way. And so here's an example of the cybersecurity digital credential bundle that students earn. And each one of these four components here, these four micro-credentials on this pathway to the cybersecurity skills pathway badge, are those learning outcome, each one of these are one of those learning outcome bundles that Trey showed just a minute ago. So for right here. So here's a cybersecurity skills bundle. And so each one of those micro credentials is represented by one of these little colored squares here. And when students earn the digital credential, it does a lot more for them than just something that they can post on their LinkedIn, because it helps to articulate for the student what we as a college, and by the way, I've changed jobs from Chaffey College to Santa Ana College in the last 2 weeks. So I need to, what Chaffey College as a college is means when we say that a student has learned this particular set of learning outcomes. In this case, organizational vulnerability assessment is a program learning outcome. And you can see under the earning criteria, each of the SLOs, the student learning outcomes or course learning outcomes that students are required to meet in order to be, recognized for achieving competency in this program learning outcome. And they can also use these digital credentials for job exploration. So, for example, when students get the digital credential, they're hyperlinked to keywords in Indeed.com. And when they click them, it will show them positions that have those specific skills listed and that are even within their zip code. And so it's a way for students to really make relevant the learning outcomes that they would normally see on a syllabus and forget about, and instead turn those into something that they see their achievement as they're learning, and also B, can see how that achievement connects into the real world of work. Right in this view, what you can see in Canvas is how students are able to see how a completion of a learning outcome, like here's a course learning outcome called threat identification, traces back to specific assignments and courses. So students are able to have a record in Canvas through a tool that we created with Instructure called the Outcome Alignment Tool. They're able to, see the relationship between what skills we say they're learning and specific assignments across the curriculum. And they always have access to that data as well. So far, what you've heard me talk about, and most of what you've seen from Trey, is related to these discipline skills, more technical skills, specifically in cybersecurity. What we haven't talked much about are these durable skills, which, I use the word skills kind of and competencies synonymously with learning outcomes. I think it's helpful for us just to think about learning outcomes as a way to express skills or competencies. And so durable skills really are those which we might think of as as skills that would be taught across the curriculum and you wouldn't just find in one discipline. And so when Trey works with our departments or works with the departments at Chaffey to establish, well, what are the technical and durable skills? Every department has a durable skill bundle, and that includes 3 or 4 learning outcomes that they prioritize as the main durable skills that they're going to really focus on in their discipline, above and beyond the technical skills that they teach. And so in the cyber computer information systems discipline pathways, those durable skills are synthesis, or otherwise known as innovation, professionalism, and adaptability. That doesn't mean they don't teach other durable skills, but it just means that those are the ones that they're giving a lot of attention to. And where do students also learn this? Of course, across the general education pathway. And so, that really is consistent with the mission of general education to, excuse me, to provide students with a strong foundation for lifelong skills and for lifelong learning and life skills. And the problem with, I think, what we all struggle with at the community colleges is that we require students to do general education, but we aren't able to really tell them what they're learning while they're going through that pattern in any kind of exact way. And so this process that our faculty senate went through of distilling the institutional or general education learning outcomes into 4 categories that then have subcategories of durable skills really helped us to create a series of rubrics around durable skills that faculty could import into Canvas. And so here, what you can see is our institutional learning outcomes, which we have 4 of. And underneath each one of these, there's 3 different skills. And our faculty actually came up with a total of 12 skills that we have developed 4 rubrics for each. So adaptability has 4 separate rubrics. Resilience has 4 separate rubrics, 4 different types of components of resilience. And all of those they all live in Canvas for faculty to use to assess students. And so we really turned our institutional learning outcomes and rebranded them into a new durable skill framework called ACES, which stands for Academic, Community, and Employability Skills. And then, of course, we created digital credentials for those durable skills. So here you can see what the digital badges are that students earn as they achieve competency in those durable skills through assignments in Canvas that are assessed by faculty across the curriculum. And then the students can see where they are on their durable skill pathway to earning, say, a credential here in adaptability. A student will be able to see that they're 50% complete on their adaptability pathway, having earned credentials for 2 of the different components of adaptability. And in order to earn one of these credentials, the threshold is they have to complete 2 assignments per learning outcome, per SLO. So in this case, it will require 8 total assignments, 2 for each of these learning outcomes here. And then we are also able to pull out some incredible data. So I'm actually going to take you to the live dashboards that show how we can look at, say, durable skills broadly across the entire institution for hundreds of thousands of assessments. So here you can see that by far, Chaffey College is assessing communication more than any other durable skill. The idea that you can pull a profile for an institution based on real assessments out of Canvas is a really exciting sort of breakthrough for us. And what's really neat is, this is like an institutional profile at this point in time, but we can also, say, look at a specific meta major, like let's look at business, technology, and hospitality. And the shape of what skills the college faculty are giving more focus to changes. So in the business meta major, actually entrepreneurial mindset is the most frequently assessed skill. And then analysis solution mindset. And this, of course, changes over time because it's based on real data about how faculty are connecting relationships between their assessment, their assignments, and the rubrics for these different skills. And we're able to drill down by course, term, even location, to see kind of what really is the skill the skill datascape across the entire institution. And when we want to think like creatively about data visualization, we can look at these different meta majors and skill profiles overlaid on top of each other using translucent spiderweb graphs. This beautiful graph here is created by Trey. Um, and and you can see, health and wellness, the green translucent here, its shape differs greatly from, say, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, in that health and wellness has a strong bent towards communication, and then the STEM area here is much more focused on resilience and innovation. But these are based on real data that we pull out of Canvas. And we can also look at, say, the shape of a program of study in terms of its skill profile against the general education courses that students in that program of study take, and how those two overlay on top of each other can influence how departments might choose specific gen ed courses to recommend on a program map, for example. So I'm going to turn it over to Trey, and she's going to finish this out.
All right. Make sure if you have any questions, put them in the chat. So we've shared the process. Matt has shared, how the utility of this for students. Now I'm going to, pop open the hood of the car and show you what the engine looks like and how it runs from a technical perspective. So when we started this process, and it's been almost 5 years now, it really was around collecting data that from a lot of different sources from the root, where learning is happening, so that we could get a better story, a truer story of what the students are experiencing and when does learning happen? How do we know, right? Can we tell sooner than later? And how does that translate towards the students' goal of transfer or career? So we have to use our systems. That's the long story short to say we had to use our systems in order to be able to manage the amount of data that we knew was going to flow, and to be able to scale it up across the institution. So what does that process look like? We knew everybody was in Canvas. We started this at the start of the pandemic in 2020. So we knew we had everybody in Canvas. So that was going to be, central headquarters for getting this data. We also knew that Canvas had features that we weren't really tapping into and utilizing, particularly at that time, which was the outcome feature. And so that became a way for us to say, let's take a look at that feature and figure out how we can use it to scale up. So we go from the Canvas outcomes, and of course that can be brought into Canvas rubrics, and allow for direct assessment of those outcomes. But then through our development over time, we had some pain points because Canvas out the box, yes, they had these features, but some of it wasn't integrated in a way that allowed us to do our process, because our process was different than the people who built Canvas. And so we had to work with Canvas to create a bridge to say, this is what we are doing. We want the data to flow a little bit better, and this is how we think that tool can work, because we were doing it manually. So we were basically downloading that data dump, putting it into an Access database, manipulating the data, and then figuring out who was awarded my credentials and pushing it to a different system. So we understood what the workflow was because we were doing it manually. And so we knew that if we could automate some of this process, it would help out. And so that Canvas outcome alignment tool was what came of that partnership with Canvas. And we'll show you some of those screenshots. But that allowed us to migrate from the LMS to the Canvas credential platform seamlessly instead of doing it manually. So the Canvas outcome feature in the LMS. This slide shows you how we're organizing our technical skills. So we have our ILOs, which are in a separate folder. So all of our institutional learning outcomes and skills are in a separate folder in Canvas outcomes. And then for the technical skills, we wanted to put separate folders by department. So this is the structure. We have an overarching folder that holds all of our technical skills so that faculty can discern what's durable versus what's technical. And then we have 6 academic and career communities. So that is a folder. And then we drill down by department, and within those department folders, faculty can find their skills and learning outcomes. So it is a tiered folder structure for ease of finding specific outcomes related to your discipline. Okay, and so let's go to the next one. So again, the durable or the institutional learning outcomes are automatically placed in every course every semester. So faculty have it in their course. Now they can just attach it to assignments as they see fit, if it makes sense, if it's aligned to those skills. They attach it to their rubric that they're already using, and they can do a direct assessment. For the technical skills, the first semester that they want to start assessing, they would go and find their department folder, bring that into their course, and then do the same thing, align it to assignments as necessary, and then they can continue to do direct assessment. Okay. Now the outcome alignment tool. We talked about skill bundles previously. The outcome alignment tool allows us to create the relationship between skills and microcredentials, and then have the system automatically curate across every single course in the system to say, have faculty attach these skills to any assignments? And if so, have they assessed and have students met the threshold, right? So imagine, again, this is not just a department or a set of courses, it's across every single course that we offer at Chaffey. So being able to automate that where we're not doing it, a person is not doing it, but the system is big in adoption and scaling, right? So how this looks with that outcome alignment tool is that on the admin side of the LMS, we're able to say, for these particular skills or bundles of skills, these are the learning outcomes that are aligned to it that we want to take a look at to see if students have met all of the thresholds, not just for one, but for every single skill that we're aligning to. And if so, we have a badge attached to that. We want to recognize that for the student. And so we're going to tell you what that relationship is so that the system can automatically award those badges. So it goes from the outcomes to the alignment tool where we tell it what the alignment is to a badge, and then it automatically awards it at Canvas on the Canvas credential side. And this is how it looks. So now we're looking at screenshots of that outcome alignment tool. This first screenshot is the admin level control. This gives us some high level information. It tells us which badges we are accounting for in the LMS and what skills do we need to look at for each of those badges. It also tells us at a very high level, how many badges have we awarded? So this helps because we don't have to go to a different system, right? We can do all of this reporting and high level overview in the LMS. So it's telling us, for example, for adaptability, it has been awarded to 764 students, right? So we can have a high level view of what's happening across the campus, and we can drill down to a student or a particular skill with our reports on this admin side. We also, when we built this out, we said we want to make sure that all stakeholders have access to data. So not just from the admin side, but we want faculty to be able to have some information that may inform what they're teaching, how they're teaching, or how they're supporting the student. And so in the courses, faculty also have a view of this outcome alignment tool that allows them to see what skills am I assessing, and how does that contribute to a student's overall skill development, right? So they'll be able to see within their course, what am I assessing, but are there other courses that are also assessing this for a particular student? This is important because one of the conversations we always have with faculty is that this is a we discussion. It is not on one department or one area to develop skills. We are all developing skills, and so it's important to understand that you don't carry the burden, and so you don't have to assess every single time, because everybody else on campus is also developing these skills in students. We also said in a development, we want to have a view for students so that they understand and can start making connections on where these skills are showing up, how it's contextualized in different disciplines, and to have a high level view of their progress. So again, they don't need to go outside of the system. They can see in the system how they're progressing on developing these skills. So students, in their view of the outcome alignment tool, can drill down to any badge, whether it's in progress or awarded, and see which courses they have been assessed, which assignments, and how well have they done, right? And so this helps, again, to make it relevant, to help contextualize, and when they need to speak about it, they have a reference point to say, oh yes, I remember what I did, and how I'm making connections now between what the skill is and how it looks in biology versus English, right? And so those are all those three views: admin, faculty, and a student view. And so this is an example of that chain of custody for a student. This student was awarded a digital fluency credential, and they were assessed across 4 assignments. And it's not just their CIS courses. They were assessed in their history course. They were assessed in a health sciences course, as well as 2 disciplinary or major courses, CIS courses. And that combination helps them to earn that badge. So if you look, let's go back to Sylvester. So Sylvester has ended his first year, right? He took English 1A, English 1B, Poli-Sci 1, and his first CIS course. We can see now that all of those discipline areas, so English has gone through this process, Poli-Sci has gone through this process, as well as the CIS department. We can now have a fuller picture of what skills Sylvester has been developing over his first year across his curriculum. Not only durable, but technical. So you can see for the durable skills, he had several opportunities to demonstrate what he knew and what he could do as it relates to adaptability, social justice, empathy, digital fluency, and critical thinking. He also started to develop technical skills that will be further developed as he continues his academic career. So he started developing how to storytell and how to develop his unique voice in writing and speaking. He started to develop skills around ethical reasoning and how does that look, in my work, risk assessment, reflective reading practices. So all of these skills are current skills that our departments, those respective departments, have identified that they're prioritizing and developing the skills across the Chaffey campus. So he's being assessed, he's giving feedback, and he's getting opportunity to demonstrate his proficiency levels across both types of skills. In fact, he even earned 2 badges, one in digital fluency and one in critical thinking his first year. So let's open it up for discussion, thoughts, questions that you may have around how it looks, how learning looks at Chaffey.
It's okay for you guys to raise your hands, come off mic, or just put a question in the chat. Either of those are all good.
So we have a question from Wanda. How do you add to my Canvas courses? Wanda, would you mind coming off mic just to
Yeah,
elaborate
that's
on
what I'm saying.
what you may be wondering about?
Yeah, I was okay. So I'm familiar with the badges. I think that they have a very, very, very good thing for both the students and the faculty members. We just have not done this at my school, and so I wasn't paying attention the whole time, girl. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I wanted to figure out how would I then is it something like where you're going in and adding in things into Canvas? Is there some place that I could add in that particular feature?
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to give you a two-way answer.
Okay.
One, to get started, and then two, if the campus is ready to kind of adopt and scale up, because there's a
Oh.
lot that you can do now
Mhm.
without like this outcome alignment tool. Because again,
Okay.
we built that when we knew that we were ready to scale and we did not want to do the manual labor.
Mhm.
And all you really need is to be using the outcome assessment, I'm sorry, the outcome feature of Canvas. And then think about that skill forward language. So a
Mhm.
big piece of that process was we knew that SLOs were probably not well written universally across the campus.
Pretty much.
Having worked with all the departments, I found some good, bad, and some ugly. So part of this work was an opportunity to rewrite our outcomes to make them measurable and accessible, because a lot weren't, right? So we took
Okay.
this opportunity with the departments to say, hey, we have Trey here on campus. She's very focused on this work. Let's look at your outcome language and rewrite those so that they're skill forward. But to go back to your question, the jump off point is to start using your outcome tool in a way
Okay.
that makes sense for when faculty can bring it in and then align it on their rubrics to their assessment. You'll start getting data flowing from that. The piece where you may have to do an investment is because you have a lot of data. How are you going to be pulling it out and making sense of that data? And so for us, it made sense to develop the tool because we wanted to tie it to outcomes or to credentials.
Mhm.
But that may be, again, getting a better understanding on the campus of what do you want to do? We have this feature, we're going to turn it on, the water's going to be flowing. How can we then use this data to make more informed decisions about what learning is happening and how we better support our students? I think that's going to
Okay.
be the piece. You have anything
Okay.
else to offer, Matt?
No, I think that was great. And we also have additional questions that kind of elaborate more, I think, on what you were just talking about. You had mentioned, Trey, the outcomes tool, and Kate asked, you mean in the admin section of Canvas, not at the course level? That's correct. And I think that's an important distinction. as well for Wanda, which is that we're really doing this work at the admin level of Canvas and not at the course level. So faculty don't have the ability to alter the rubrics. They pull in the rubrics into their assignments. And even the credentials are at the digital credentials and Canvas credentials are created at the admin level, and the alignments are created at the admin level, so that they're of course based on what the faculty uh, direct in terms of their learning outcomes, but structurally, because of the scale of the numbers of sections and faculty, it has to be managed at a kind of like global level, not just within like individual courses, because there's too much
Okay. Okay.
opportunity for like human error if it goes down to just the course level. I hope that helps answer the question, Kate.
Yeah, it does. Now, I also think that in the past I've heard something
And then
in
we also
regards
have
to the.
a question from Brandy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How were the disciplinary skills gathered? You may have said this, but was it faculty based? And Trey's really been leading the work on that, and so I'll let her answer that question.
It is all faculty based. So I am an instructional designer by trade, so I am very comfortable in facilitating the process with faculty. But my role of the last year was to hit every single department and start this process with them. And so usually what happened is that a department, either through nomination or just excitement, nominated a faculty lead to meet with me. And then I met with that person and I shared the process, began to have the discussions, and gave them information to share back to the department. That faculty lead then was able to share that work with the faculty in their departments. Sometimes they brought me in to help with that facilitation, that department facilitation. But it's all faculty driven. And my piece was to lessen the workload, right? So they could sit in that expertise chair and really just share their thoughts, their experience, and what they thought was prioritized. And then I was able to curate that into a format that then I could share back and say, this is what I heard, and this is what I'm seeing in your curriculum. Does it make sense? And so it was a lot of back and forth. And once the department decides, yep, this set of skills makes sense for what we do, then we put it into the system.
I have to say, I think, having come from, I've worked on this now at three different institutions, and with public institutions, state universities and state colleges, we tend to just carry the faculty. I'm a former faculty member. Like all of this work was just carried on the backs of faculty, to write your learning outcomes, to measure your learning outcomes, and we really tried to blend, not to give too much props to the for-profit institutions, but uh, you know institutions that don't really give as much. One of the great things about our state institutions is that faculty have a lot of control and power over curriculum, which is what you want. But I don't think we've done a lot to support faculty, though, when it comes to helping them create the learning outcomes that they're going to be the happiest with, and also to support them in being able to organize that work and figure out how to create systems to measure it. Instead, it's like we haven't brought instructional designers like Trey to support outcomes assessment work at scale in a way that I think would really benefit most institutions.
Good questions. You have a couple more minutes if anybody has any questions or just thoughts.
Oh, sorry, I had my mic off. If you don't mind me asking, what is your role at your college? Because you said you're engaged in that very thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm also, it's partially sort of by virtue of our accreditation that's upcoming, but I'm at a University of California institution and I'm doing that very thing in an ID capacity, surveying courses about their learning outcomes. But I'm in the process of moving it back to faculty and thinking about how to connect to those disciplinary skills. So that was really helpful.
That's great. Awesome. I have not heard of this happening at other public institutions, just the model that you described. And so, where you have an ID kind of companion working with all the faculty. And so, yeah, it would be great to connect offline, to just share your experience and maybe some strategies that we've both been able to sort of leverage, because I do kind of think it's not fair to just leave the faculty just like alone on an island to just develop the learning outcomes and figure out how to measure them and everything. They're not that's not something that faculty are trained to do either.
No, no, they're not. I think most are really interested in the process. I'd love to connect with y'all. It sounds great.
Yes, and Kate had a question as well. Uh-oh. Yes, we are happy to share our process, our lessons learned, collaborate. We're very transparent in pretty much everything we do. So feel free to reach out either to myself or Matt, and we can go even deeper if you're ready. Well, thank you all for your time and questions and engagement. And again, if you have any further questions or wonderings as you process all that we shared, feel free to reach out to us, and let's have a conversation and keep this moving forward.
Thank you guys so much.